Hello, my name is Crystal Gomez, and I am one of the assistant directors of the Writing and Multiliteracy Center. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my presentation and go through my module. I hope that the information and the skills that we learned today help you in the future or help you in the near future as you go on to apply to research programs and further your research endeavors at CSUCI or even beyond. So before we can even dive into my presentation or my workshop, I do want to quickly go over what we're going to highlight in my workshop. So before we can even dive into what a research statement is, right, I do want to give us the opportunity to differentiate the difference or the differences between a personal statement and a research statement, right? So, you may be thinking, well, aren't they the same? Not necessarily, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that as we dive in. Of course, we'll also go over the structure and organization of a research statement. I'll give you a couple examples on how we can kind of go about that, especially if we start to outline our research statement or even write out our first draft. And then, of course, we'll go over some exercises together today, right? We'll walk through a couple of research statement examples. But of course, you will also have the opportunity to work on your own research statement, or at least the first half, right? So I invite you to work on your particular research statement, whether it's an outline or even the first paragraph. And then I invite you to turn that in into this module just so that you can kind of get that credit, but you can also get the practice and confidence to move forward with it. And then, of course, I am part of the Writing Multiliteracy Center, so it is natural for me to promote our services, right? And while you are welcome to utilize this presentation to go through the process on your own, I highly recommend that you also work with a WMC tutor or visit the Writing Multiliteracy Center to also go through the process together. It's always nice to kind of have a second pair of eyes look through your draft or look through your outline. But of course, if you have questions, you're also welcome to kind of show them this presentation, or even more so, just jot down questions and talk about them with your tutor. They are always there to help you. They are peers, they are trained, and they would be more than happy to support you through your writing process for the research statement. So before we even dive into a research statement, remember, we're going to talk about the difference between a personal statement and a research statement. But before we even talk about the differences, we have to at least acknowledge what a personal statement is and then what a research statement is, right, compared to it. So a personal statement, students, when they think about personal statements, they think about grad school, or they even think about undergraduate school, right? You probably had to write a personal statement in high school or in community college to even apply to CSCCI, right? So you're probably already aware of what one is, but really more so a personal statement allows a writer to identify the big three questions, right? The first one being motivation, right? What's your motivation for applying to this particular program or this particular school? So answering the question, why, right? Why are you doing this? What is your motivation? What is your reasoning behind this? And then there's the how, the qualifications. So, how are you going to succeed in this program? How are you going to succeed in this institutional setting, right, or higher education setting? So that's where you kind of identify your qualifications, your readiness. What have you done to make you an ideal candidate for this program or for this university? Again, we're talking about personal statements at this time. We're not really diving into research statements. And then, of course, there's answering the question, what, right? So, what about you as an academic, as a student, as an individual, right, will get out of not only this particular program, right? How are you going to fit into this program? But of course, what is this program going to get out of you, right? So, how are they going to benefit from having you be a part of their team or be a part of their program or be a part of their university? And how are you going to benefit from being a part of their university, a part of their program, right? So really we're answering more so these three questions in a personal statement. But, again, today we're focusing more so on research statements, especially when it comes to STEM fields, right? Or even STEAM fields. But much like the personal statement, right? A research statement answers those same three questions. However, the way we go about answering those three questions is a bit different than a personal statement. So when writing a research statement, we want to focus on the why, right? And it's not just motivation, right? Motivation to join this team or this program or this research program, but more so your motivation for this particular research endeavor, right? Like, why do you want to research in this particular field? Why do you want to research this particular topic, right? So, what's your motivation behind that? And then we have the how, right? And unlike a personal statement where we kind of talk about, specific academic achievements or extracurricular achievements or even personal achievements, in a research statement, you want to make sure that you are identifying your qualifications in terms of like competency for this research endeavor, right? So maybe it's specific academic accomplishments, maybe it's research accomplishments, or more so how you are ready to take on a research program or even just research in general. Maybe it's your initiative, your management skills, even your maturity level, right? If you're going to be a part of a research team in a lab, right? How are you qualified to be a part of those spaces, really? And then, of course, we have the what, right? And so here we have to just be a bit more specific, right? What makes you a good fit for this particular program or makes you a good fit for this research group, right? So based off of your why, sorry, and your how, you know, how are you a good fit for them, right? And then vice versa. How are they a good fit for you? How are they going to help you move forward your professional career, your academic career, right? Or even just your research endeavors, right? So more so, unlike a personal statement where we are kind of, focusing on either academics, curricular, more so the personal aspect, right? And introducing that personal aspect to our audience, to our reader in a research statement, we do a bit of that, right? We do answer the why, the how, and what, but the way we go about that is more strategic. It's more refined, right? It's a bit more specific in the way we introduce ourselves in our research statement. And so if I can just provide more so of a quick, just overall encompassing definition, a research statement is more so answers the questions why, how, and what, right? Through an organized narrative that provides evidence for your story, right? And an evidence meaning what makes you an ideal candidate. And the way we can go about this, right, especially as we start to kind of organize our paper or organize our research statement, is through a reasoning narrative perspective, right? So we are trying to reason with our audience, reason with either the judges or reason with the research application committee to really get a good understanding of who you are as a researcher, right? But also how you are prepared and how you will be able to be an ideal candidate um, for that particular program or for that particular team. And so as we kind of dive into more so, what a research statement is, I want to go ahead then and focus on, well, now we would know what a research statement is, we know what it encompasses, we know our three questions, and that we have to answer those three questions in our research statements. I want us to go over now more so the structure of a research statement. And of course, much like any other writing intensive assignment or even your personal statement, you want to start off with an introduction, right? And an introduction, you want to make sure that off the bat, you are already establishing your why, right? Establishing your motivation for research. So as you go on to write your introduction, or even more so just to start outlining it, you want to make sure that you're asking yourself questions such as, why are you doing this, right? Like, what's your motivation for even writing this personal statement or even applying to this particular program, right? What is the need and or value of the research you are interested in pursuing in this research program, right? And so if we really break down the introduction, we could do those in a couple of sentences, right? So one thing that you want to do off the bat is briefly introduce your area of interest and why you are drawn to it. So there are different areas of research. There are different fields of disciplines, right? And so which one are you interested in? Right? And why are you drawn to it? What is there maybe perhaps a particular class that stood out to you, or maybe you've always had a liking for this particular topic or for this particular field? You want to go ahead and introduce that in your introduction. But of course, you want to provide a bit of context, right? So what is the research problem or what is the need in the research area? So maybe perhaps you've identified a gap in knowledge and methods or et cetera, or just a gap in research in general, or a topic in general that really interests you. And you're like, I want to find the answer for that, or I want to further the answer for this particular topic, right? So we're making sure that we are introducing that as well in our introduction. And then, of course, expanding on that. So, what progress is already being done on this particular subject or this particular gap in the research or this particular field in the research? And what isn't already being done, right? Maybe you're noticing you're applying to a particular program that is, you know, advancing in cancer research, right? So what have they already done? What haven't they done? And where do you fit in that conversation, right? In that particular field? And then, of course, the contribution, right? So, what do you want to contribute through your research that either builds off of previous research or fills in those gaps, right? What kind of questions are you hoping to answer? What are you hoping to gain from this particular research endeavor? And what are you contributing overall or want to contribute overall to this particular research endeavor? And then, of course, you want to make sure that you have a statement of interest. There are a lot of programs out there, a lot of programs that either, go about research in a different approach or even in similar approaches. But when writing a research statement, you want to make sure that your research statement is tailored to that particular program or that particular research endeavor. So making sure that we have an explicit statement of the program or about the program in your introduction. So for example, if you are applying to CSUCI SURF, right? So that's kind of the undergraduate research program that we have on campus that happens over the summer. You may want to apply to that, right? So making sure that the audience know that you want to apply to that particular program, right? And not another program that is not the one that you're interested in. And then, of course, we have the body, right? And so as we move on through our research statement, we want to make sure that we are identifying that second question of how. And how are you qualified and prepared, or how are you ready? And you could make sure that you are telling that in anecdotes, right? And so, one way in which we can kind of demonstrate our qualifications or our readiness for this particular program is by talking about key experiences either in academia or in research, right, that you have gone through to help you further your research endeavor or further your academic or professional career within this field. So maybe you have had or taken a couple courses that relate back to this research topic or this research field. Maybe you've done other research programs. You could highlight specific academic competencies and skills acquired through these experiences. Maybe it's readiness or readiness qualities, right? So maybe you have acquired time management, team building, organization. And maybe you can identify past experiences or projects, or even current experiences or projects that you are going through for this particular research endeavor. So maybe it's something along the lines of, taking um, multiple biology courses, right? And maybe you've been in a bio lab and you have worked with the team. You have maybe gained some interest on a particular bio topic, and so you want to dive into that a bit more beyond what you have done already. And then, of course, there's other key research related experiences. So maybe if you haven't, that's okay. But maybe you have gone to conferences. Maybe you have published something. I know a lot of undergraduate students who have, or maybe you've gotten recognitions from your department or from your professors. You want to make sure that you're also highlighting those in your body. Provide details, right? And don't just show, or I mean, don't just tell, show. Give us details, give us examples. Don't just say, I took 4 classes, um, 4 biology classes during the fall, academic semester. What were those classes, right? What did you do in those classes? Give us an example of having this research related experience or academic experience. You published or went to a conference. Great. What kind of conference did you go to? What did you publish? Who did you present to? And of course, you want to make sure that you are being concise in all of this. Provide only relevant examples, relevant information in your body. You sometimes, when it comes to research statements or just statements in general, whether they're personal or research, there's a limit, right, in the amount of information that we can provide. And so we want to make sure that we are being concise as well, that we are only providing the information needed to showcase our talents, showcase our qualifications, and also showcase our motivation behind that. But of course, you want to make sure that you are asking yourself questions such as, well, what kind of academic skills or knowledge and readiness qualities are these programs looking for as you start to really flesh out your research statement, right? And so I invite you, and this is probably something that you can do on your own, but before you even start typing, before you even start outlining, go ahead and ask yourself that question and start to highlight, well, okay, these are the experiences I've had. These are the skills that I have obtained. These are my qualities as a researcher, as a professional, and as an academic, right? Identify those off the bat before you even start to write or even start to flesh out your outline. I think it's very important for you to do that so that you're able to really have a good understanding of not only your motivations, but also who you are as a researcher in that moment, right? And even if you don't have a lot of research experience, dive into other areas that you have really great qualities, right? Maybe it's, again, leadership qualities. Maybe it's, really good at taking notes, really good at being a leader or taking initiative in a project or being creative, right? Or maybe you have done a bit of teaching or a bit of tutoring. Maybe you have attended, workshops where you learned about data processing or data collection. Identify those, right? So that you're able to easily translate those into your research statement. So now that we have kind of gone through at least the first half of a research statement, right? The intro and the body paragraph, I want us to go ahead and we could do this 2 ways. I want you to, if you can, I'm going to link this in the module, go to the research statement handout, and more so, we're going to have this exercise at the bottom, and we're going to work through that together. So this is actually a student sample paragraph that someone submitted to a research program on campus. And so what I would like for us to do is to take a look at that, and whether, again, you can pause my research statement workshop and read it on your own and then kind of highlight as you go, or we can do that together. That's okay. But I would like for you to at least dedicate 5 minutes to reading that student example. And I want us to identify the following, right? Well, within this particular student's research statement, I want us to identify whether or not they have um, documented the kinds of academic skills or knowledge or readiness qualities that a particular program is looking for or would be looking for. as they look through candidates. So I'm going to go ahead and more so walk through this particular activity together. Again, you can go ahead and take a pause on it if you would like. But overall, we're just going to identify, the overview of research experience, describe if there are any specific experiences, and then any takeaways or results or impacts from them. But again, more so just answering that question of what kind of academic skills, knowledge, and readiness qualities would a particular program be looking for, and how is that student communicating that through the research statement. So I'm going to go ahead and read it now. So I'm going to read the first half, which is, I was fortunate to be part of a summer research experience as an undergraduate, which took place in Costa Rica. It allowed me to gain hands-on experience in research while living abroad in the Cabo Blanco Absolute Reserve. My first project introduced me to shell taphonomy. I studied the diversity of shells found in a highly dense portion of the reserve, as well as the different damage types found on the shell surfaces for each family. The results of the study helped us understand the types of families that are most vulnerable to predators within the Pacific Coast region. The focus of my second research project in the reserve was on native reptile species called Tenosaurus similis, or black spiny iguanas. I studied activity patterns, dietary preferences, and social behaviors of the iguana. I performed experimental feeding trials and found that Tenosaurus can distinguish between various types of flavors. I also found that there was a substantial increase in the acceptance rates of samples with added sucrose. This type of research can help us understand the ecological importance of these organisms within the given environment. Aside from research, I participated in a homestay for 10 days while in Costa Rica. I lived with the local family and learned about their culture. The cultural immersion aspect of the program allowed me to open and be a part of a different culture. So you can take a minute to read this on your own. I'm going to actually take a pause so that we can really take a minute to go over this. And when we come back, we'll work through this together. All right. So let's go ahead and move forward. So as we dive into this particular paragraph, right, we want to go ahead and identify off the bat the overview of research experience discussed in the paragraph. So that's more so the topic, right? And if you look at the first sentence, we identify that. I was fortunate to be part of a summer research experience as an undergraduate, which took place in Costa Rica. It allowed me to gain hands-on experience in research while living abroad in the Cabo Blanco Absolute Reserve, right? So off the bat, they're providing an overview of their own research experience to kind of demonstrate that they have done this in the past. And then, of course, they give specifics about that, right? They're not just saying, I had this research experience as an undergraduate, right? But they're providing more so details on what that hands-on experience was, right? So they do that in the following two sentences. My first project introduced me to shell taphonomy. I studied the diversity of shells found in a highly dense portion of the reserve, as well as the different damages types found on the shell surface for each family. And then, of course, we have that in a second sentence, a little bit lower in the paragraph. The focus of my second research project in the reserve was on native reptile species called black spiny iguanas. I studied activity patterns, dietary preferences, and social behaviors of the iguanas. And performed experimental feeding trials. So again, they are identifying, how not only what kind of hands-on experience they obtained, right? But what they did in specific during that experience, right? And how they were introduced to this particular field, right? So through this program or through this research experience, they were introduced to shell taphonomy, right? But then, of course, they were able to do what, right? They were able to do research on black spiny iguanas. They were able to study their dietary patterns, their social behaviors, and he even did experimental feeding trials as well, right? So that's really good information to, you know, put in a research statement to really give the reader an understanding of what specifically you did, right? And how you gained that experience. And then, of course, they noted their findings, right? So, what did they notice? Um, or what did they collect more so from their findings, or what did they gather or gain from that experience, right? So, they found that the Tenosaurus can distinguish between various types of flavors. I also found that there was a substantial increase in acceptance rates of samples with added sucrose, right? So, they're not necessarily going really deep into the findings, right? But they're mostly just identifying, well, what is it? What were more so the results, right? And how do those tie back into the hands-on experience that they were noting in the first half of their paragraph? And then, of course, what are the takeaways and what were the impacts from the study, right? And more so, not impacts overall on like the research field, but impacts on themselves, right? As a researcher. The results of the study helped us understand what the types of families that are most vulnerable to predators within the Pacific Coast region, right? So we get a good understanding of what they took away from this research endeavor, right? This type of research can help us understand the ecological importance of these organisms within the given environment. But of course, you know, the cultural immersion aspect of the program allowed them to open and be a part of a different culture. So those are impacts that they had, not only just within the research realm, but also as a researcher themselves, right? They gathered this data, they were able to take a new lens to this particular research endeavor, right? But they also were able to gain a lot of experience themselves as a researcher. And then, of course, you always want to make sure that you are including explicit takeaways, right? Or again, being explicit when it comes to um, providing those examples as well, right? And that could be through keywords or through key phrases that you're including in your research statement, right? So, they performed experimental feeding trials. It was hands-on experience, right? What kind of understanding did they get from this particular research endeavor? And then, of course, as we go through the body, right, and we want to make sure that we are also, right, we already went through identifying why, right, what's your motivation, and identifying how. But now we want to go ahead and identify the what, right? So in a conclusion, we want to identify, well, what is you know what makes you a good fit for this particular program, right? What are you hoping to do? And you've been telling this story and you're providing these details of your experience, not only in the research field but also in the academic field. You have already introduced your motivation behind this, but overall, really, in your conclusion, you want to make sure that not only are you recapping those and referencing back to those aspects, but that you are also answering, well, what's next, right? What are you hoping to do for this particular program? So you could apply to other programs, you could not apply to programs at all, right? But there's something that has motivated you. There is something that has provided you experience and that has made you a qualified person. But now we want to make sure that we have a good understanding of what you hope to do with that in this particular program, right? What do you imagine yourself doing in this particular program? What's your potential research direction? Who do you want to work with? And I always tell students when they come in with their research statements, right? Have you done your research on these research programs? Do you know what the research program is about? Who is a part of it? What kind of research are they doing, right? Where are they going? And so you want to make sure that you're doing your homework. You go in and you take a couple of minutes to really educate yourself on this program so that you could be explicit in terms of like, this is who I want to work with. This is what I want to do. These are, all of the goals and motivations of your program. And I think they align well with myself, right, as a researcher. And of course, describing how the program has the necessary resources to support you in your research endeavors, right? So maybe you are looking for a research program that has research teams, has space, has labs, has funding sources, right? But overall, really, you want to make sure that you are not only, detailing how you will make a good fit for this program, right? But how is this program going to be a good fit for you as well? How is it going to support you in your research endeavor, in your professional, um, realm, or journey as well. And then, of course, we have again that handout that I provided earlier. And I'm going to go ahead and after I read this, give you a pause to kind of take some moments and answer the questions that, or at least identify um, where are the references to these programs and goals within this conclusion. What are your interests, right? Or what are the interests in research in this particular paragraph? And then what kind of resources he's hoping to take advantage of through this program. So I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to read this, and then we'll take a pause so that you can work through this on your own. So my goal is to obtain a bachelor's degree in biology and go into industry. I would like to study the effects of mutated proteins or malfunctioning proteins on various diseases, including Alzheimer's and cancer. I am interested in researching signal transduction pathway and the effects of proteins malformities on gene expression. CSUCI SURF offers a plethora of potential research mentors that can help me pursue my own research goals. I am interested in working with Dr. Gal Bitten, who focuses on creating molecular tweezers to prevent amyloid formation. My interest lies in understanding protein folding and how folding governs function. I would like to understand how amyloid formation is caused at the molecular level and would like to find a novel approach in preventing protein misfolding. Similarly, Dr. Lin Jian studies amyloid formation but has a different approach. I have an interest in computational research and would be interested learning more about Dr. Lin Jian's research. Also, I am interested in Dr. James Dubois and Dr. Pascal F. Higa's research on membrane-bound protein mechanisms. I understand that studying membrane protein folding dynamics is difficult, and I'm interested in learning more about current techniques used to study folding mechanisms in biological systems. Other research topics that pique my interest include signal transduction and its relation to cancer. Dr. John J. Colicili studies different ROS proteins, their roles in signal transduction pathways, and their roles in cancer development. In any case, my own research experience makes me an ideal candidate for many of the faculty in the CSUCI SURF program. So again, I'm going to take a minute to pause so that you can walk through this yourself, and we'll be right back. Right? So we can move forward, right? I'm going to go through the first aspect of this conclusion, right? So where within this particular paragraph are there references being made back to the program and motivation for applying? Well, we can find that at the beginning and also at the end of our conclusion paragraph, right? My goal is to what? Obtain a bachelor's degree in biology and go into industry, right? So it's a very clear indication of what they are hoping to do moving forward with this particular research endeavor or just overall, right? Their goal is to obtain a bachelor's degree in biology and then, of course, go into industry. But of course, they also want, um, to be a part of this CSCCI research program, right? Their motivations for applying to this particular program as well. And then, of course, the question, what would you like to research or do in the program, is also answered in the following sections, right? So I would like to study the effects of mutated proteins or malfunctioning proteins on various diseases, including Alzheimer's and cancer. I'm interested in researching signal transduction pathways and the effects of proteins malformities on gene expressions, right? So that's what they're hoping to gain out of, right? Their overall experience as an academic and as a researcher. And of course, identifying their interests, right? My interest lies in understanding protein folding and how folding governors function. I would like to understand how amyloid formation is caused at the molecular level, and would like to find a novel approach in preventing protein misfolding. And again, we get a good glimpse of that towards the bottom. I understand that studying memory protein folding dynamics is difficult, and I'm interested in learning more about current techniques used to study folding mechanisms in biological systems. Other research topics that pique my interest include signal transduction and its relation to cancer. So again, we get that motivation. And of course, what resources are available to this particular student? Well, we can identify that in the last half of this particular conclusion, right? CCCI Serve offers a plethora of potential research mentors that can help me pursue my own research goals. And then, of course, in each section, they're going over the research endeavors of the professors or the faculty that are part of this program, right? And what they're working on or focusing on for their own research, right? So of course, these are the kind of resources that are available to help them further their, goal of obtaining a bachelor's degree, further the goal of knowing more or studying more about these particular fields, further the goal of going into industry, and being a researcher, right? So of course, as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, I want to go ahead and give you the opportunity to write your own research statement. So what I would like for us to do right now, right, as you have watched my presentation on research statements, is to at least outline the first paragraph or the introduction of your own research statement. Now, as I mentioned before, I also welcome you to at least take a moment to jot down all of your experiences, all of your motivation, your experiences, but all of your qualities as a researcher, right? So again, maybe it's classes that you have taken, maybe it's labs that you have participated in, or other research endeavors that you have participated in. Maybe you have done conferences or published, right? Or maybe you have taken particular courses, and within those courses, you have done, particular activities within them. So what did you do? So as you start to map out your own experiences and your own motivation, once you have done that, start outlining that first paragraph, right? And again, you don't have to write it word for word. All you really have to do is identify, right, your three big questions: your why, your how, and your what, right? And of course, you could always go ahead and visit the Writing and Multiliteracy Center. You could work with a multiliteracy professional so that you can kind of have someone, again, provide you that second pair of eyes, but also be a resource to you. It's free, it's available. And if you have any questions, you're always welcome to kind of walk through those questions and find the answers with that tutor. But again, thank you so much for attending my workshop virtually, of course. If you have any questions, please feel free to visit the Writing Multiliteracy Center website here through this hyperlink. I will also be hyperlinking this through my module. You could also, of course, just drop in at the WMC. We're located on the second floor of the Broome Library, or virtually, or in person as well. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day and of course, a wonderful research journey.